Welcome to another AVID chat. David Harpole, Jack Arnold, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
If you're joining us today, we're going to share, in our professional opinion, 3 tips to handling money in relationships. I think that in relationships is key. We deal a lot with individuals, but predominantly, to be honest with you, couples of all shapes and sizes and ages and backgrounds and all that. And I think there are 3 things that we know we've witnessed in 15 plus years of doing this professionally that can be impactful, and we're going to share them with you. So let's start off with what we, and this is a pretty big term, but are known as money scripts. You maybe heard of them in your personal life. Love languages and the roles that they play in relationships, I think, is extremely important.
Yeah. We did a video on money scripts. I don't know which number it was, but maybe we can include that in the comments if we kind of want to go back. But just to kind of give an overview, so a money script is just your kind of the stories that you tell yourself about money. And a lot of times those are influenced by your experiences growing up, whether in your adult life with money or just growing up and see your parents deal with it, or how that impacted you coming up. And you develop certain stories that you tell yourself about money. So money is the root of all evil situation. And, therefore you feel like if I have money, I'm a bad person. There's all these money scripts they can tell you. And sometimes they can be hindrances to kind of moving things along, but sometimes they can help depending on what they are. So they're not necessarily a good or bad thing. They just are stories that you tell yourself about money. Comparing it to, you said love languages, where it's like, if you're in a relationship with somebody, maybe the other person has, love languages. I don't remember all of them, but it's something like acts of service, where like doing things for somebody is your love language, or gifts is one, words of affirmation is one. And sometimes when, if you're I know my wife, like we have different love languages, knowing what the other person's is helpful, because if I'm communicating a particular way that I think is, my particular love language, and she expects something different, then I won't get the reaction that I want, and she won't get from me what she's getting, and obviously vice versa. And that's like a point of conflict. Whereas it's not to change those or pass judgment like this is good, this is bad. It's more just, that's yours, this is mine. Let's keep that in mind when we're doing things. And the money scripts is a good one. It's the same thing. Your money script is this, my money script is this. How do we keep those things in mind when we're developing how we're going to deal with our finances, I guess?
Right. So would you throw this example in there as a money script? It may be a little stretch, but from a professional standpoint, obviously we're planners. So my notion is to save, plan, project. Let's think out, when I'm 65, what does life look like? And are we on track? Where I would say Melissa, my wife, is less of that in terms of long term, and also wants to make sure that she enjoys life as much as possible while she can. A lot, I think, is due to the fact that her father passed away at 59, and know of other people that's happened to. So there's no, in her mind, there's no guarantee on life. So I want to enjoy it. So those are 2 differences that over the years together now, pushing 10 years, married this year, that we've really had to work on understanding that to one another and finding a happy medium in there.
Yeah. I think that's a great example. I would say those are like 2 kind of divergent money scripts. Like, they're kind of opposite of each other. That's like, I think that's a common conflict. It could be a lot. It's not always necessarily cut and dry. And I don't think for you all it's necessarily that cut and dry. There's other things that factor into that. But yeah, that's a good example. Like, here's what I think and here's what you think. And let's not say that, well, your way is wrong and my way is right. It's like, well, how do we mix these 2 things together and come to some kind of agreement as to, because of that, we'll do this, but we'll also do this. And, maybe we both don't get 100% of what we want. There's a little bit of compromise, of course, between those 2 things. Maybe that's what this whole video should be, is compromise. But yeah, I think that's a great example.
Yeah. So tip 1 is know your money scripts. We have some tools at AVID that help you do that. You could Google money scripts, and I'm sure there's a gazillion questionnaires and things out there. Yeah. So I would encourage you to do that. Second tip would be open communication. I think that, again, I've experienced this with my wife for sure. I'm sure you and Jessica have as well. But in dealing with other couples, a lot of time one of them ends up handling the finances, so to speak. It's not always the male, which I think is stereotypical, but sometimes that, I guess, closes the communication and has some underlying stresses to the other partner that is maybe feeling, I'm not involved, or, well, he does it all, or she does it all for me. So I would say tip number 2 is really have open communication on financial matters.
Yeah, obviously, totally agree. I think it makes sense to have one person be kind of the point person and handle, quote unquote, handle the finances. I think that makes perfect sense. There's going to be typically somebody who's more drawn to it and wants to do it. But we've seen multiple times where somebody will say, and not like in a I don't trust what they're doing situation, just like, yeah, I trust what they're doing, but I really have no idea what's going on. I'd like to get more involved, not because I need to know what they're doing, more just I'd like to help. I would feel better if I kind of knew what was going on. And, maybe the other person not even really knowing, how do I communicate it, or, the best way and what they would want to do. I just know in my experience, most of what we talk about is, obviously I do all the kind of finance stuff, is, every once in a while we'll sit down and say, all right, here's what's going on. Here's what we got. This is in here. This is in here. Here's how stuff kind of moves around. What do we want to be doing, and kind of where we put this money, and think about it and talk about it. And I swear that's probably a 10-minute conversation every couple of weeks. Like it's not super in depth. It's just, I guess it's more like a checking in than it is to have like a big formal meeting about it.
Well, and I think she's not here to ask her, but my guess would be Jessica would say that's enough for her, right? She doesn't need to get into the weeds and know every penny that's moving around and, balances on multiple accounts if you have them, whatever, but enough to say, okay, we're on track. We're doing these things. We've got this money set aside for our next trip, whatever you guys talk about. But it's probably, I guess, enough for her to feel comfortable, to feel involved, and not to be like, I have no clue.
Yeah. Well, I will say it does help. Obviously, I'm kind of patting myself on the back a little bit. Is I'm pretty organized with it, and I know what's going on. So, really, it does help. Like, if you're the one that's kind of in charge of the finances and you don't know what's going on, it's going to obviously not going to help the other person. So, I guess, you need to be able to communicate it, but you need to have it in some kind of organized fashion so that you have anything to even communicate. Like, so you can say, well, this goes here and this goes here. And, it's easy to look at. If it's kind of just helter-skelter, it's all over the place. Well, you don't even know. So, as long as you know what's going on, you being the person that's kind of handling the stuff, it's easier to communicate it with the other person. But, yeah.
No doubt. And I would say there's one more thing in here. We could probably do a whole video on this alone. But if you're in a relationship and the other person does it solely and you have no idea what's going on, this is so horrible, but in situations where life ends unexpectedly, that person that's left in the dark, it creates so much extra work and stress. And we've seen it personally. It's very difficult. So I think that's in there with tip number 2 about open communication is don't be polar opposites. Don't be so extreme that I want nothing to do with it. I don't care. Melissa handles it all, because I promise you, if you're in a situation where that happens, if I do it all and I don't wake up tomorrow, Melissa would, she's not this, but it would be a lot of added stress if she didn't even know what checking accounts we had. Yeah,
right. Again, another kind of vote for keeping things organized and straightforward so it's not super complicated. But yeah, you're right. I've seen that happen multiple times where it's one person knows everything that's going on. And even to your point, it's one thing to say, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, you will sometimes see people say, I don't care. I don't want to know. It's good. You don't have to memorize the stuff and be in the weeds, but, right. At least having an idea of here's where all the stuff is. And if this happens, call this person or whatever it is. Yes, agreed.
No doubt about it. So let's wrap up. Tip number 3 is have a plan, right? And I think these kind of work in succession with one another. If we know our money scripts, we kind of know how we feel about things, what we believe, what we ultimately want to get out of the use of our money. We have open communication now. We're talking about things. We have a good idea of what's important to both of us. Now let's put together a plan so that we can be working towards all of these things that we've already known, and we have something to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, doing those other two things, like knowing your money scripts and kind of, I guess you could lump values into that, which we talk about quite a bit, is knowing your values,
Right.
being clear on that, being clear on what the other person's values are and kind of what order they're in. Knowing your money scripts, then having a good organized system that you can communicate to the other person, and then having some kind of plan. They're like, all right, we've both kind of sat down, we've really thought about this, and we've talked about it. This is where we're going for now, and let's both work to this. It's not way on my side, and it's not way on your side. It's a little bit down the middle. Let's talk about what we're going to do, and revisit as time goes on. And if we need to change something, we can. But we have an open communication. We know what's going on. It's easy to do that. So yeah, having a plan. I mean, honestly, a lot of these things are just like reduce your financial anxiety in your relationship. It just makes things easier, and all of these things
For sure. No doubt about it. It's a great point. It does help release the anxiety that you might have. Again, we've seen this in our own lives, working with other couples, that just getting these things together in order is a huge, huge help for people.
Yeah, no doubt.
Any final thoughts here on our 3 tips to handling money in relationships?
No, I don't have final thoughts, but I do think, I think if you go back, maybe we could put that money scripts link in the comments if we can find that one. I think we've done one about values, and maybe that's a good one to include if you want to go back and watch. I'm not positive if we've done it. We talk about cash flow probably in every single video, but maybe we've done a specific cash flow one. But those would be good ones, like knowing cash flow one, knowing your values. And those would be good ones maybe to revisit in terms of how-tos, I guess you would say, on how you could incorporate some of those things into your planning with your significant other.
That's a great point. As always, like, comment, subscribe to our channel if you haven't. If you think there was value in here, share it with a friend. Send it to them. It's a quick link. Copy and paste and send it along. We really appreciate it. Jack, good chat today.
All right, see you.
See ya.